as all of you know by now, the US government is imposing tariffs on its trading partners, and that includes the countries we trade the most with, including China, Canada, and Mexico. This has significantly impacted the stock market. The SP 500 is down, the Nasdaq is down, Chinese stock exchange and the EU stock exchange are all down. But how does this impact the government contracting space in the US? Today we're going to break that down and look into detail how you can protect yourself against these tariffs. Alright, so tariffs can impact material and component cost. They can increase the cost of the goods sold. And even if you manufacture in the US, you're still going to incur some cost due to tariffs. For example, let's say you do construction. What's going to happen is that the steel and aluminum in this country is mostly imported from Canada. And any tariffs on steel and aluminum coming into this country is going to impact the price of goods that you purchase to perform the construction job. And that will eat into your profit because most government contracts are firm fixed price, and that's especially if you submit your bid before the tariffs or right now and you don't account for these costs, then it's going to bite you later. So you have to be careful that these costs from tariffs do not eat into your profit margin. The second thing, which is already implemented, but I think they're going to be more focused on this, it's called Trade Agreement Act. And that's some trade compliance that prohibits products from non-TAA compliant countries like China or Russia and requires US manufacture or substantial transformation of the product in the US. So if you import from the wrong country, it could disqualify your bid. And I think, as I mentioned, there's going to be more scrutiny and more focus on this in the future. This usually the trade agreement kicks in for GSA scheduled contracts, certain DoD contracts, and any federal contract over a dollar threshold of $200,000 for goods and services and 7.5 for construction. Another act that already exists, but I think they're going to be more focused on, which is the Buy American Act, BAA. So BAA favors goods made in the US, and depending on the contract, it will require the product to be manufactured in the US or contains a part or a certain percentage to be of a US component. So with this and with all the limitation, it's going to be more profitable for you to source your products domestically instead of going overseas and trying to find a supplier for these products, because there are going to be all of these legislations around buying American and also for not being compliant with the Trade Agreement Act. So these two things, I think they're going to be more focused on of just buying American and avoiding trade partners that are not compliant. So how do you adjust your pricing on your contracts such that you are not impacted by these tariffs? So some contracts, like the cost reimbursement type, these allow for adjustment. So even if you get the contract and turns out that things cost more than what you expected because of tariffs, with these kind of contracts, they might allow for adjustment. But for firm fixed price contracts, the contractor usually bears the risk unless there's a clause like the economic price adjustment, it's called EPA, or changes clause like FAR 522431. So with firm fixed price, unfortunately, you're going to have to bear the burden of the tariffs and the increased costs. So how do you protect yourself against this? So you handle it in the proposal. So you have to be in your proposal, you have to be transparent about the material sources and potential impact of tariffs. So you mentioned we're sourcing XYZ from this country. You have to factor in risk to your pricing model and add contingencies or escalate cost if appropriate so you can protect yourself. You don't end up losing money on the contract because you didn't factor in for tariff costs. And finally, since everything is up in the air, nobody knows what's happening, you have to monitor tariffs on commodities you depend on. So going back to our construction example, if you rely on steel and aluminum, I would monitor and see how things are going with Canada because a lot of that is imported from Canada. I would try and see how things are going. Are we gonna end up having a deal? Are we still negotiating? What happened to that deal and so on? Because these will impact the cost of the raw material you use, such as I mentioned, aluminum. So I would monitor tariffs that for all commodities that you depend on, see how the negotiations are going. And then if you see that we're getting into a conclusion, then maybe you don't factor too much into the tariffs. But if you think there's an actual risk, then you have to hedge against that by including a cost associated with tariff or potential tariff associated cost, or by looking into contracts that would guarantee that you don't end up losing money at the end of the day. Finally, I would like to tell you that agencies are aware of tariff impacts. This is not the first tariff impact that we've had in the past, and sometimes they issue modifications or guidance. For example, DoD issued guidance on Section 232 for steel and aluminum. GSA sometimes allow for price increases due to tariffs. But they always move slower than you. That's why you have to be ready, and you have to protect yourself in case these tariffs impact your bottom line profit. Stay protected, and I'm hoping that you make it through these uncertain times. If you would like to get into government contracting, or if you want to find government contracts and win government contracts, you can check samsearch.co. You'll be able to find government contracts on all level, and then you'll be able to break them down using AI and submit proposals and generate proposals with them. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.